I am Bart, and on this episode, we are discussing the bubble players for the USMNT, who is in trouble, and who do we think will be enjoying the party come this summer. We'll also discuss some transfer news and some other US soccer news around the team. Joining me tonight is a man who always stays on the good side of the Federation. It is Thomas, aka US Keeper. Never, ever has he had a run in with the Federation over details about stats or uniform selections.
Yeah, they're feisty with that. They take that quite personally. So I'm definitely not on the good side. I've not been able to get the access I've with things I used to be able to get to. So they're definitely a little bit more tight-lipped these days with what they want to share. And I understand that it is a home World Cup, so I'm sure they've got plenty of things going on. So
I can attest that they are busy because they seem busy. Every time I talk to one of them, they tell me everything they're doing, and I'm like, oh my goodness, that sounds like a lot of things they're doing. Speaking of being busy, we do have several mini games coming up in March. We have five to be exact between the men's and women's team. But while we have a little bit of a downtime, it feels like a good time to look at the men's roster and project out kind of maybe who will end up filling in those final spots on the roster, and unfortunately, maybe who will get cut. So we'll talk about that in the second segment of the show. To get things started, though, we're going to do a quick transfer roundup, Thomas, because we actually had some interesting movement for USMNT players, both home and abroad, and feel like we should talk about them. I feel like, and this is just me, the biggest move was Alex Freeman going from Orlando City to Villarreal, and he has actually played a couple matches, not a whole lot. Obviously, he was not in season, so he is ramping back up. But this seems like, I mean, he's got a single digit number. This seems like they actually care about him enough to like kind of include him in the roster and look at him as a piece going forward.
yeah, it's. I mean, I think it's a big move for him for sure. I mean, you know, he's got quite a few caps under Pochettino. He's 21 years old. It's in some respect, it's kind of the time when you might want to take that chance. I think it's always tough in a World Cup year to make that jump, especially for a player that I feel is, probably closer to on the roster than off. But like, you know what I mean? It's a
Totally.
a level of intensity that increases with obviously playing at a higher level in Spain and but a good opportunity. I mean, we want to see our players playing the best competitive soccer that they can, and I was happy for the move for him.
It's funny because he really only has one full year of professional soccer. I mean, he played with Orlando City B for a few years, but Orlando City's senior team really only last year. 6 goals, 6 assists across the competitions in 2025. Now he gets a big move. That I'm with you though. Like, I was a little worried about this because you could get a move right before a World Cup and end up not playing, but it seems like Villarreal do prioritize what he has to offer, which I think is something that, to your point, can help him truly make a roster, especially when we're not quite sure what type of formation Pochettino will actually play at the World Cup and where right back fits into that. And where Serginho Dest even fits into that, because who knows where that, man will end up playing on the field and if it's truly a right back or if it's a right wing or whatever it looks like. So this is good for him. I think it's fun. Also in Europe, we have Damian Downs going on loan to Hamburg from Southampton. So he goes back to Germany. He wasn't playing at Southampton. He hasn't really played, done much for Hamburg, but that's a move. Cole Campbell goes to Hoffenheim from Dortmund on a permanent move. He is injured, so he won't be playing until the end of the month. But I think a little disappointing that he did not get really a shot at Dortmund, but not super surprising.
Yeah, I mean, with those big clubs, you've got to take the opportunities when you have them to impress. And he just wasn't consistent enough putting in the limited minutes he was getting, and then obviously injury comes into play, and then at that point you just kind of you get forgotten. And so I think he's going to need to regain that a little bit with
Mm.
Hoffenheim, and kind of earn that back. And I think when you're a young player, I mean, I think you go through those ups and downs, the trials and tribulations of trying to get those minutes, try to prove to yourself, prove to your club that you have the value there. And I think he's a very talented player, and he's quite young, so I think he'll have plenty of time to be able to earn that in there, and hopefully with kind of maybe less pressure on him uh, than we're seeing at Dortmund. So
And hopefully a better path to actually playing meaningful minutes too. I think that's really the goal for that move. Leaving Europe, Griffin Yao has moved from Westerlo, which is look, he's moving from Westerlo to New England Revolution. I'm just going to be real. I think this is a parallel move, but I do think if you're talking about possibly getting noticed by USMNT coaches, maybe being domestic player isn't the worst idea, especially if you're really only middling around the Dutch or Belgian, league.
yeah, I think he a couple of years ago, maybe it was even further back than that. We had our eyes on him. He was impressing and doing well at a high level,
Totally.
uh, and it was a player that in a position of need that we were looking at. Was he going to be able to help the U.S. on the wing? And then he sustained some injury, and he's really hasn't, I think, gotten back to the form that he's probably wants to see. And coming home for him, maybe is a good opportunity at 23
Mhm.
to do that and come home and see what he can do and see if he can catch back on. At 23 is kind of that like limbo age, right? Can he make an impression? He's probably looking at next cycle, and at that point, you start to become you get no man's land
Yeah.
for the national team if you can't get into the mix, in that he's in his prime years now, right? So in the beginning of that. So if he can go in and score a bunch of goals for the Revolution, which as a fan of Revolution, I hope he does. Um, you know, maybe the eyes will get on him, and then he is able to kind of elevate from there and provide. Again, still needed depth on the wing for the U.S. So that is definitely a position of need now and going forward.
He played 4 seasons, well, 3.5 counting this season, at Westerlo, and then had about 3 seasons 4 seasons with DC United, jumping back and forth between DC and Loudon, MLS and MLS Next and all that. So, he is an established professional. It just I feel bad that it didn't work out better for him over in Europe. Officially coming home is Luca de la Torre from Celta Vigo via San Diego. He is now with Charlotte FC, so he obviously went on loan from Celta Vigo to San Diego last season, helped them play pretty well, I will say, in their first season in MLS, and now he will go to Charlotte to hopefully shore up that midfield. And look, he's a dude who I think is also how do I put this nicely? I think he's well down the depth chart now, but he's a guy who isn't bad to have in the pool because I think he brings a pretty consistent level. I don't know if this increases his level.
Yeah, and I'll always use this player as a comparison because I think he had moments with the national team and shine with Sasha Question.
Sure,
And
yeah.
you know what I mean? And Del Toro kind of has some of that, right? He has moments of like, wow, this guy can do something out there, and has those moments, and then sometimes it just kind of fades in the background, right? And I think we've seen that a lot. He's had his chances, right? He's definitely had his opportunities. Um, and it's sometimes just the timing of it, right? It just doesn't line up. I mean, um, when he played 30 or so matches last year for San Diego, I think he played pretty well for them. I think it's just right now, maybe not in the cards. He's not even on my top 40, I don't think, of men's national team players right now to kind of keep an eye on. So he's going to have to shine with Charlotte if he's going to even get a sniff of a look for the World Cup roster. But best to him. I mean, he's 27 years old, so I think he still has a lot of years left in him. So hopefully he can regain some of that quality that we've seen kind of at that hybrid 6-8 type position
Mm.
where he seems to play pretty well. So
I'll just say this: I don't think it's a bad thing to have pretty good, talented U.S. players in MLS.
it's
There's a
not. I
hot
mean,
take for you.
Yeah, but I mean, Kleshman was a player I love to watch. The guy was very tactical, and De La Torre is very similar to that, right? Like he's fun to watch. You want to have those type of players, um, within your domestic league, that have played in Europe and that are, kind of understand the high intensity, levels of soccer that have to be played, and he provides that, and I'm glad he's here now. I think it's where he needs to be at this time. So who knows? Maybe he gets another chance over in Europe. But for right now, I think Charlotte's lucky to have him.
Cade Cowell comes from Chivas to Red Bull New York on loan. Uh, I don't know. I don't really think he factors into this pool a whole lot. I'll be real honest. Maybe I don't know. But it's a move from a USMNT player.
Yeah, he's always a tough one. Like again, he's the kind of a poor man's Paul Areola a little bit. I don't think he's been able to kind of find his spot, find his click where he needs to be, the player that he's kind of projected to be. Um, I think that's a problem. I mean, he's still 22,
Hasn't gone to that next level. I agree.
right? Yeah, and I think yeah, we'll see. I mean, he's starting to get that reputation of kind of, a jobber type of player, right? He has those moments but just can't be
Yeah.
consistent over time. And that consistency piece, right, is huge when we talk about, I don't care who you are with the men's national team, is the consistency season to season to season. And we're seeing it with bigger name
Mhm.
players like Pulisic right now, who's dealing with some injury type of thing. But that's the consistency. We don't see that with American players, right? We'll have a season or two where they shine and they'll kind of drop off or whatever it is, right? And so that year to year consistency is something that does lack from the U.S. men's national team. We just don't have it, and that's kind of a problem when we talk about playing and competing against top tier nations at World Cups, right? Are the stars going to align where we're going to have
Mhm.
our key players in the top form that they need to be, so that they can compete and achieve or exceed that at a World Cup?
He played 3 seasons, 2.5 seasons really at Chivas. Last year, his first full season at Chivas, 30 appearances, 9 goals, 3 assists. Cole Bassett moving from Portland to Colorado, or excuse me, from Colorado to Portland. Um, Another one who kind of hasn't quite maybe moved up the ranks the way we thought we wanted to, but has potential here to be maybe a star for Portland, or at least someone who is an impact player for them in the midfield.
Yeah, again, another player we've watched kind of bounce around Europe a little bit and then back and forth from the Rapids. Um, Not a lot of youth or international time with the men. So hopefully the move is able to to solidify some minutes and get some quality behind that for him. I mean, there was high hopes for him years ago, and that's maybe the fans and everyone else kind of putting him on a
Mm.
pedestal where maybe he shouldn't be, but he does have quality, and it's just a matter of making finding the right situation for him.
All right, two that did not happen. Ricardo Pepi to Fulham was kind of fell apart toward the end of the transfer deadline. I'm just gonna be real honest. I think this is a bit of a stretch for him. That's just my personal take. But I really think this fell apart because he got injured, breaking his arm while scoring a goal and falling down. So, yeah, it may very well happen in the summer though, especially if he continues well at the end of the season for Feyenoord, and then hopefully, especially for us, has a great World Cup or at least looks impactful during the World Cup.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, I look at. I mean, I think you know that league has done well for Americans. They've succeeded and played well. It's not a top league by any means, but it's definitely a league that and PSV obviously has played in the Champions League, and I think there's a lot of good about that. The move is tough, right? I mean, we
Hmm.
saw Josie Altidore shine and then go to the Premier League and just fall on his face, right? And so I'm not saying that's Pepe's path, but it's just one of those things where those moves are critical. I don't know. I've said it before and I'll say it again. The, the guidance that these players have when they're talking about these big moves, right? Like in some of the big moves, and we'll talk about, with the next one, it's a little bit different. It's more of a bold move, I would say. But in terms of putting themselves out there, Pepe's, a young striker who we've seen great things from. Does he lose his confidence if when things don't go well? Because when you're playing at that level, there's not a lot of patience from managers to give you
Mm-hmm.
multiple chances, and so that's what happens. And I guess I'm sure they understand that, but whether they truly understand that is kind of uh, you know unknown. Um, and whether they come back on, because even Pulisic, I mean, he rebounded well after leaving Chelsea. We got AC Milan, right? I mean, that's not normal. You know, from what we see from Americans, right? To be able to make that switch and then play at the high level that is expected.
I do feel bad for Pepe. He's had a couple of not terrible injuries, but long enough injuries that have kept him out a lot this year. Hopefully, he can just get over that. Last one to talk about that did not happen. Josh Sargent did not move from Norwich City to Toronto, um, which I'm going to be real honest would not have bothered me if he went to Toronto. I know this. Some people would have been like, "Oh my gosh, this is the end of everything that we've ever hoped for Josh Sargent." I don't care for. I don't think that way for two reasons. One, he's done what he can do in the championship, and he's on a club that, at best, is a relegation fodder team in the Premier League. If he wants to be maybe not a better player, but do more at the club level, uh, yeah, I don't know, like move into Toronto to maybe win games in MLS and possibly compete for MLS Cup or even the Canadian Cup. Like, fine. I don't know. This didn't bother me the way it seemed to bother other people. However, the fact that it fell apart in the way it did because he basically said, "No, I am moving," and then Norwich were like, "No, we want more money," and Toronto's like, "Oh, we're not paying that much money for you." It is kind of funny. Also, note he has not played since January 4th.
Yeah, this is a tough one. Only because I can see why the frustration of fans, because he was, and I won't remember the club, but there was some transfer rumors of him going to Germany, which I think he would have been a good move for him. But it's clear, and I think he even said this, that he wants to come back to the United States. Like his family's here. He wants to be. I say United States. I mean, Toronto is
I
obviously
mean,
Canada, but
look,
he,
closer.
yeah, he wants to be closer to his family, and and that sort of thing. And I get it. Um, you know, He's going to be 26. He's kind of at that age where you're right. He's done everything in the championship over in England. I mean, he scored over 50 goals for Norwich, which is pretty damn impressive. When we look at what he's done over there,
Hmm.
he's really on the outside looking in as far as the national team spot. So maybe he says, "This is it. I'm going to move. I'm going to take that chance." And it's not a stretch to say a striker in MLS could get on a World Cup roster even in 4 years, right? Um, if everything aligns and he's playing well, right? We know what he can do. Unfortunately, it just hasn't come together in the timing that we'd like to see him. He's had chances, multiple chances, and for whatever reason, he's not able to score some of those bigger goals in the moments with the men's national team that we'd like to see. Um, yeah, I think he's stuck in Norwich for now. I assume he'll get transferred over the summer, maybe somewhere else. But it's clear he wants back to the U.S.
Uh, well, he still hasn't scored for the U.S. since 2019, so that I'm not going to worry too much about him. All right, welcome, Lawrence.
Hey, I made I made it. One of the drawbacks to this being kind of like a not my 9 to 5 job is that every so often we have really interesting stuff that we get to do in the 9 to 5 job, and as it turns out, 9 to 5 turned into 8 to 6:30. So,
Oh yeah.
but I made it. I might be a day late. I might be $1 short, but I'm here.
Well, you arrived just in time for the best hot take portion of the show, so
Yes,
this is what you do best.
that's that is
I'm
both.
not
I
talking
choose
about
to
it.
take that as a compliment.
You should. You should. We've not discussed this on this podcast because we haven't really talked a whole lot about USMNT because there hasn't been USMNT stuff to talk about. So we're gonna do it right now. what did we think of Mauricio Pochettino's comments about Tim Weah's thoughts about expensive ticket prices at the World Cup? And to just make sure everyone knows what happened, some people are reading a lot of things that may or may not be connected. Tim Weah said after being asked by French newspaper La Défense L'Hiver, I don't know, a French newspaper, basically just saying like, hey, what do you think about the 2026 World Cup? Tim Weah said, quote, I am just a bit disappointed by the ticket prices. Lots of real fans miss matches. It's too expensive. Football should be enjoyed by everyone. Now, before we move on, that seems to be like the majority opinion by 9% of people out there. That's just what I'm going to say. Mauricio Pochettino, however, apparently had no time for this. He said, quote, I think players need to talk on the pitch, playing football, not outside. It is not his duty to evaluate the price of the ticket. We are not politicians. We are sport people. That only we can talk about our job. Lawrence, shut up and dribble? Is that what Mauricio Pochettino said about a lukewarm take about ticket prices?
Yes and no. I guess you could say. I don't think. Here's the thing. This situations like this, I get a little bit frustrated with the way some of these are framed, or the way the chronology is presented. And it's the same way as somebody who works in the legal field. I get frustrated when you read headlines that say federal judge blocks ... Like a judge from somewhere just showed up and says, nope, nobody gets to do X, Y, and Z anymore. Well, that's not exactly how it works. There is an issue that is brought before that judge. The judge decides, am I allowed to rule on this? And then if I am, here's the ruling. Here's why I ruled this way. As somebody who reads a lot of judicial opinions for work, that is something that irks me. So the way this is kind of presented, it made it seem like came out like guns blazing, rocket launchers, grenades, all of this, double birds to everybody. And that's not really what happened. This was somebody, a journalist at a news outlet asked Tim Weah a question and he answered it. And the substance of his answer, I don't disagree with. I don't think anybody here disagrees with. And so off the bat, it's just like, no, I mean, what Tim Weah said was fine. Now, I guess if we're going to call it the shut up and dribble route, I guess it's a little bit more acceptable for the coach of the team to do it than, say, somebody on the outside looking in. Whereas, like rather than somebody trying to do it for YouTube clicks or whatever. I guess from Pochettino's standpoint, he has always, as long as he's been here, I guess I've noticed and I guess appreciated that he has. It looks to me like he's always trying to be gracious to his host, as in we are like he is from another in this country and is, I guess, not to rock the boat or to be nice to everybody, which I respect and appreciate, to be perfectly honest. Now, is he mad at what Tim Weah said, or is he just mad that he said it? If he's mad at what he said, then I think we've got problems. Because again, I don't think anything Tim Weah said was inaccurate, incorrect, off base, none of that. Now, if you're Mauricio Pochettino, I think one thing that really he's been trying to do since he got here is we need to work on us. We need to focus on us. There were a lot of problems before I got here. We got to fix those problems. On and off the field, there were problems, and that's what we got to work on. And we're going to be playing a World Cup. And yes, maybe the group is easier than it otherwise could have been. But if we want to if we want to maximize our performance and go as deep in this tournament as possible, we are going to have to give 110% every single game and be completely and totally focused. And, I guess from his perspective, giving quotes like this maybe doesn't speak to being completely and 100% 100% focused and dialed in on the task at hand. This would also be something that maybe, again, this is also another thing. Tim Weah was asked a question and he answered it. He didn't just go off the deep end off his own. I suspect that Mauricio Pochettino was also asked a question and answered.
Mm-hmm.
This wasn't him showing up and saying, Tim Weah is a wackadoodle. What is he doing? Why is he talking about this? I'm sure this was somebody on a U.S. soccer conference call going, giving him what they thought was a softball. Hey, what do you think about Tim Weah's comments about ... And I'm sure the expectation when that question is asked is, yeah, we're, it's hard to disagree with Tim. The ticket prices are high, and we hope we can figure out a way to get them back down. I think if you've been paying attention to how Mauricio Pochettino has operated with the national team, asking questions like that with the expectation that you're going to get the easy answer back or the PR friendly answer back, I don't think you've been doing your job as a journalist if you don't know what to expect when you ask that question. If you expect one thing and you get the opposite, and then you're surprised when you get the opposite.
I mean, Thomas, I just feel like he didn't need to be as dismissive of Tim Weah.
Yeah, I think Weah's coming from a position of saying, hey, I'm concerned. I want our fans in the United States to enjoy this tournament that we haven't seen since 1994. He's coming from, and I think it's a fine line between, the certain pieces of it. I think fans want to have that compassion, but also Pochettino's like, focus on soccer. We want to have your mindset around soccer, trying to have any distractions. So it's that balance between that. I'm not sure this is the battle to fight with that, though, in my opinion. It's not like you're criticizing your teammates. You are criticizing the federation, not the federation, but the FIFA in general. So maybe, they don't want that sort of attention. Maybe something came down from U.S. Soccer on that too, to kind of keep your mouth shut. It's hard to say, but
I'm sure U.S.
was,
Soccer. I blame them a lot for these ticket prices. I'll be just flat out honest. They seem to have been just roadkill when it came to these. I don't know why they allowed FIFA to do this. They are the host nation. They can do something about it. So, but anyway, sorry. I have way more thoughts on U.S. Soccer's culpability in all this.
Yeah, I think I think some of it's coming from the top down on it, and Pochettino is, kind of the face of this team and the face of the federation, when we're hosting the World Cup. So I think that is part of it. Yeah, I don't know. To me, I think he kind of could have probably kept his mouth shut on that. I don't think it's worth blowing up the whole situation on it. You have a just quick comment, say, hey, look, let's on the side, don't make it public. So to me, it's not a public issue, right? It doesn't need to be. It's a valid point that Weah brings up that all fans, American, are dealing with, and any other.
Not just American fans, but
the
whole world.
Yeah, French fans, too. Who, I just, for me, I don't understand how having a thought, man, these ticket prices are really expensive, at all impacts your ability to go out there and play soccer to the best that you can. I do not understand Pochettino saying he needs to just focus on playing soccer. It's like, well, one, he still is. This was done outside of his normal soccer playing things. It's not like the dude goes home and is like, okay, well, World Cup, I got to think only about the World Cup. Yes, our players should be focused on that, but they have other duties. Part of being a professional soccer player is answering questions from the media, as Mauricio Pochettino also has to do that. It also felt very much, I think, like you said, it felt like this was very kiss the ring of FIFA and Gianni Infantino, which he seems to have borrowed from another president of an organization near and dear to our hearts. He definitely seems like he's like, well, what if FIFA knows what they're doing? Which, yes, they do. They're trying to gouge fans and make sure that soccer belongs to the highest bidder and not the common good. But hey, as long as I can say that it's in the spirit of making the sport better, or whatever bullshit line they're going to throw at us, they're going to just justify. That's how they justify all these financial decisions that just bring in a bunch of money. that don't actively help make soccer better, but they say
I,
it does because
I,
it technically goes to FIFA, and now they can
I,
pay for a goal somewhere in the Caribbean.
I made a point on my show when we were snowed and iced in for 2 weeks here in January, and I want to bounce this off of y'all. As far as these ticket prices, this isn't necessarily U.S. men's national team specific, but it's on my brain. Is I do wonder, like I think there is a fairly obvious to me kind of villain in this that's flying under everybody's radar, and I don't know if that's intentional or not as far as the ticket prices, and that's the NFL owners. Because these games are being played in NFL stadiums. And if you think back to Qatar and maybe even to Russia, the Qatari government footed 100% of the bill. 100%. They ate the cost on everything. Now, when you don't pay the people that build the stadiums and threaten to throw them in jail if they try to leave the country, that that helps you save costs there, and that's a whole different issue of all sorts of human rights abuses. But I don't think the NFL owners or the United States government is going to eat the cost on all of this. So FIFA is having to share in the cost. Thus, where are they going to make the difference up front? The savings are always passed on to us, the people. And that was part of the reason that before they announced who the host stadiums were going to be, that various people were kind of like, there was talk that LA SoFi might not get World Cup games because Stan Kroenke didn't want to foot the bill for it.
Yep.
So like that has to play into all of this in some way, shape, or form. Like these games are all being played in NFL venues. Well, in the United States, these games are all being played in NFL venues, and that like all of that money goes into one pot, and the owners are not going to countenance an event in their venue where they're not making a massive chunk of change on it. So like that's the other thing. Like the NFL owners have as much, maybe not as much money as the oil sheiks in Qatar because they have trillions with T's and S's.
But individually, as a collective, right? Like that's my look. I agree with you because like individually they may not, but as a collective they can each share the brunt of it. In their own city to some extent.
But like I said, like completely eating the cost of everything on a World Cup meant absolutely nothing to like that could have been $1 trillion and it meant absolutely nothing to them. Just like Amazon burning $3 billion on fire to make the Rings of Power meant absolutely nothing to them. $1 trillion for a World Cup means absolutely nothing to Qatar. When you factor in the bribes that got paid to FIFA, the construction costs, not so much the labor costs, but all that other stuff. So like when the host is not willing to just absorb all the cost, FIFA has to eat some of that cost, and that's got to be made up somewhere. So that is going to be, the savings are always passed on to us.
Well, and that's exactly why a lot of these fan villages will not be open for the entirety of the World Cup. Most of them will just be open around the games that they're hosting. And I get it. That does cost money, but that to me speaks more to the fact that like, oh, so our host cities and our host stadiums were not actually prepared to host a World Cup because they didn't fully understand what was going to required, or, our bid committee didn't prepare them well enough. So again, what is U.S. Soccer doing?
Well, what's happening right now in Massachusetts is they're looking who's going to pay for the security, who's going to pay for the police officers, right? They need to come to the game, right? So the Foxborough is looking to get FIFA to do that. I mean, that's not like, and I'm not sure where the responsibility lies there. Is it with the stadium owner? Is it with FIFA? Again, I'd like to see a breakout of how this money is distributed throughout the federation, prize earning, all these other things, right? Because there's a lot to go around and there's a lot of people making a lot of money on this tournament. And to me, security for this tournament is something we've talked about for a while, exteriorly. It's like, what's going on here? Like that shouldn't have to be something we're talking about 4 months out from the World Cup. I mean, that should already have been decided, figured out how you're going to do this. I mean, they said every World Cup's going to be like hosting a Super Bowl, every match. Well, if that's the
Mhm.
case, then you better have the whole damn thing laid out and figure out who's doing what from a security perspective, right?
I'm still not 100% sold that Boston actually wanted to host the World Cup or even cares about hosting the World Cup. I go back to the day they announced all of the host cities, and being the goofball that I am, I was like, I wonder what all the local news outlets and all of the host cities have to say about this. Like in Seattle, they had wall-to-wall coverage on all of their local affiliates.
Yeah.
The Bay Area, even massive major cities like LA and New York were like, hey, this is awesome. This is a big deal. CBS, NBC, Fox, ABC, Boston, nothing. Not one video, not one news story, not nothing. And it's on a personal level for me is frustrating because the final host city bid, my understanding is that it came down between Boston and Nashville. I live 3 hours from Nashville. I don't live 3 hours from Boston, but Bob Kraft is best buddies with Johnny Infantino, and that's how Boston got to bid. And you look at all of this, and it's just like it wasn't a big deal for them when it got announced. And now here we are 4 months away, 5 months away from the World Cup, and they're like, we just might not have games here.
Well, look, there's a lot of people to blame for the high ticket prices. And I'll just echo what Tim Way has said. It's going to suck that a lot of fans won't be able to experience it. I'm one of them. I have been through however many public ticket lotteries that we've had, and I've had no luck. But I know people who have won multiple times, and now FIFA's like, oh, wait, there's no hype for this. And in fact, there's rumors of tickets not being sold or canceled. And I'm like, if only you would have tried to work with people who actually care to watch the game instead of just people who have money,
I do wonder, and I've made this point to one or two people, if we see not to the extent that we saw at the Club World Cup last summer, obviously, because the 3 games in Nashville, day of, you could get tickets in the lower bowl for $10. That's not happening.
And obviously, the Club World Cup is an animal of its own in terms of why the attendance sucked. That FIFA's going to have to reconcile with.
I do wonder if it is true. Like they keep saying there's record high ticket demand. I'm inclined to believe that. But if we do get to a point where it's a day or two before, Saudi Arabia against Haiti in Atlanta, I think is one of the games. Mm-hmm. That's not a match that anybody is priming their pump for. I'm sorry, unless you are from Saudi Arabia or Haiti.
And we have a decent amount of Haitians in Atlanta, but not 70,000 people that are going to fill the stadium amount of people.
But I do wonder if we get to a point where it gets to be a day or two before the game and there are large chunks of unsold tickets and they finally decide to come off of them. I'll tell a story where 7 or 8 years ago, I was dating somebody and she wanted to go see Justin Timberlake here in Memphis, and tickets, that costs a lot of money. But day of, I got third row seats for $50 a piece because they weren't sold and they needed to move them, especially those in the front. So I wonder if we might see something like that with the World Cup.
Yeah. That's my hope, so that I can attend one of the games. Let's break from all this news and talk more about what we came here to talk about, which is the bubble players and this roster. Because as we look forward to the summer and June 12th of the kickoff, and then probably the end of May when the roster is due, but also probably the roster will be out before those May friendlies and all these timelines that happen. You're going to have 26 players, but the reality is those 26 are not set in stone right now. And as I will also say, as much as Mauricio Pochettino tries to tell me that there aren't starters or regular players. Okay, bro. There are players that if you don't call them in, you damn well better win the damn World Cup, because otherwise there will be questions of why didn't you call them in. That's all I'm going to say. Don't pull a Klinsmann and not bring in your best player in, program history just because you didn't agree with him for half a second. But anyway, there are a lot of bubble players. And so I wanted to just kind of take our stock and say, okay, who do we think will be there and who won't be there come end of May-ish of this year. So, with that said, which bubble players do we think will not make the final USMNT squad for the World Cup? Thomas, two guys who aren't going to be there come June 12th.
Gio Reyna, and this is the big one, is Ricardo Pepi. As much as I want him there,
Whoa!
as much as I want him there, I mean, the guy has to be healthy and playing, right? And we have two strikers right now in the pool that are scoring a lot. And I think this is where I don't know what Pochettino's mindset is, right? Does he say, and this is where the striker pool is kind of interesting, and I might have an article that I'm going to be coming up with. We'll see how deep we get it. But in terms of looking at strikers, right? Do you look at the history of what they've done and how they fit into your system, or you take the ones that are hot in that moment, right? And so, to me, obviously, we're only in February here, and trust me, strikers get hot and cold very quickly at times. But if you look at the strikers right now, Balogun had 2 goals today, and then Wright had a hat trick, and Agyemang is scoring left and right. Who knows what's going to happen, with from there, right? And so I think he misses out because he's just not playing right now. I just question when he's going to get back and when his form's going to be. And I hope I'm wrong, because Pepe missed out on the last World Cup, which he shouldn't have. And to me, I think he's a player that he's a very different type of striker that I think is very dangerous, either starting or off the bench. And so I want him there. I just think if he can't get back in time, he might be on the short end of the stick.
I see it with Gio Reyna, because I think we all share that same, like, if he is able to go at all, like, I feel like he has to be there, but who knows if he'll be able to go. And unfortunately, I mean, I mentioned it in our previous segment, Pepe's dealt with a couple of injuries in a row, and that's what scares me, is that, like, a leg injury, a knee injury, and now we're talking about a broken arm because he couldn't fall correctly. Like, these are problems that I don't want that to be what derails him. But, like, a broken arm is something that throws you off. You can't just go out there and play soccer with a broken arm. You do have to, like, despite what every, AYSO or US Soccer youth kid will tell me, like, oh, it's fine, I can play with it. I'm like, you have a mallet attached to your arm. You cannot be out there. Sorry.
You're like Patrick Willis in 2005 at Ole Miss.
I wrapped it in bubble wrap. That's still hard. What are you talking about?
No, I put bubble wrap on it.
Yeah, but it'll be fine. I get that about Pepe, though. That's crazy that you're saying that, and I applaud you for being so bold. Lawrence, two guys who you think are going to be there.
Yeah, I'm actually I was kind of on the fence with the two that Thomas put out, and the more that I think about it, I'm the fact that Patrick Agyemang has been playing as well as he has the last month really leads me to believe that he's probably getting closer and closer to putting himself into the World Cup spot. And so that gives you Balogun, right? Agyemang.
Yeah.
And then
and Wright is scoring too. That's kind of the other thing, is like he's scoring.
And he's also been to a World Cup and scored at a World Cup, scored the most absurd, ridiculous goal, not like in a happy, fun, cool, awesome way, but just like it bounced off the back of his heel after he missed the easiest chance in the world 2 minutes before.
They all count the same.
They do. We'll call it a wash. But man, like I know that we get frustrated with Pochettino for saying nobody is set in stone. I think Pulisic is set in stone. Now, whether he wants to be there or not is up for debate.
If he'll answer the call,
I think,
is he available this summer? You think he'll?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know, man. He's been really tired. He had to play some meaningless games at the end of the season that wore him out, man. I think probably if he's healthy, Tyler Adams is a locked on guy, and I think probably McKennie is a locked on guy. But I think outside of those three, it's all up for grabs right now. But I'm with Thomas. In November, I was like, okay, Gio's good. Goal, assist, and then another assist. He's going to the World Cup. And then, like, I don't think we've seen or heard from him since. And now I assume he'll get called into the camp in March, and maybe he'll have a great camp in March with 2 goals and 2 assists. And at that point, I think you have to take him, because all he does is not play at the club level. And then when he puts the national team jersey on, go do awesome things, which is all the more reason that it was completely unacceptable that he didn't get on the field in Qatar. And it was even more unacceptable that you told him before you got to Qatar that, I'm not playing you. I'd be upset about it too. But man, it just feels like every spot is just so wide open, and not in a good way. Not like we have it felt like going to Brazil 2014 that a lot of stuff was wide open because it felt like there were a lot of really good options. I remember somebody making that, like, post 2013 Gold Cup, somebody made a point that Jurgen Klinsmann has a problem on his hands, but it's a good one. He's got so many choices to make. But I think if the World Cup were today, I think Pepe would be out on the outside looking in. I think Reina would be on the outside looking in. And then it's just kind of a crapshoot, really. I think, I think Tessman's not going. I don't think Tanner Tessman's going.
Wow.
I think Sebastian Berhalter is not quite a lock, but whatever is just below lock, I think Sebastian Berhalter. And I have done my utmost to not hold the sins of his father against him. And I think I've been pretty well rewarded, if only so I don't have to see Christian Pulisic send a free kick straight into the first man in the wall ever again. If the only reason Sebastian Berhalter goes to the World Cup is to take set pieces, I am fine with it.
If only we had like the volleyball sub where you could just sub in to serve, then he could just do that. Oh man, I have a guy. One of my guys was your guy, because I have Aiden Morris left off, and I think Aiden Morris is. I think Tessman gets in over Aiden Morris, and I think Thomas has a guy who also rebats the Tessman thing, because he wrote this in as a bonus, so I'm gonna let you sneak it in there, Thomas, of who you think also gets left off.
I think Johnny gets left off. I mean, he's one of those players, kind of like Reina, but the reverse, right? He does well with his club. He's never really ready to go for national team, but it just doesn't line up. And so to me, I want players that are going to play well with the national team. I don't care how they're playing with their club if they play well with the U.S. And we know Reina can do that. So, and Johnny, we have not seen that. And I know Caleb, has preached for years, and he's not wrong, right? When we talk about Johnny has not shown up. He just hasn't. And that's, to me, it's a problem. And I think there are other players that may have something there. I think I still think Aiden Morse might slip in. I mean, Berhalter offers nothing other than set pieces. So to me, you don't bring a one-trick pony for a sport that you can't just sub in who you want when you want. So
Johnny Cardoso is the 2026 version of Timmy Chandler. Every time you looked up, this dude was killing it at Frankfurt. You're like, yes, he's finally he gets to the national team, and ghost. And he looked like Frankenstein's monster.
So, Lawrence, I'll ask you this, because I'm going to give you a couple of these. I also don't think, and I'm going with both of them, so I did break my own rule. I said 3, not 2. I think Cameron Carter-Vickers and Austin Trusty are left off, but only because I don't know which center backs are worth taking, right? So that's kind of to your point of, like, Chris Richards.
Yeah, he's a lock. Chris Richards is a lock.
That's all I got. So if you were to look at the center back pool, which ones do you think are not coming?
Oh,
all of them, right? Like, that's the problem here.
Yeah, like I can't lock anybody in or lock anybody out. It's just such a mixed, muddled bag, and nobody's really done anything to separate themselves, good or bad. It's just it's as the kids say, it's a whole bunch of mid. And it's with the exception of Richards. So that's funny. I keep saying I think there's only 3 guys that are locked on, and then I think I've rattled off 4 more that are locked on since then. but it's Richards, and then it's just kind of. I think at that point you probably just have to go with who's the fittest and who's in the best form at their club level. And every week we see Cameron Carter Vickers did this awesome, but then the next week it's like, what is Cameron Carter Vickers doing? And the same thing with Trusty. So it's just I guess there's a lot of options, but there's not a lot of that's my guy. I want him. He's going. We're done. This is not up for debate. This is not up for discussion. I think Richards, in terms of center backs, Richards is the one guy that's him. He's going. I mean, Arfson's an outside back, but I think he's probably going. I can't say locked, but I think he's probably going. I think I forgot to mention when we were talking about the strikers, but I do have to wonder. He's not locked, and he's not the next step below locked, but he's above mid. I think we might have to get used to the idea that Zendejas might be going to the World Cup. The way he played in September, and did he play in October and November? I know he scored that great goal against Japan, but he's back he's back in Liga MX, and he's playing well as far as I can tell. So that does maybe push Pepe a little bit farther down the pecking order, which I hate, but.
Let's move to those who you think will make the roster, Thomas. I mean, you got two guys who you think on that bubble area that you think are making the roster.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely bubble area ones, and they're kind of in line with who I had as out. So I had Brendan Aronson. I think he is killing it right now. And I have Pakir Akumon. I mean, I hate to say it because he's not the type of striker I want there. I mean, Pepe is what I want, but I think, again, and mind you, this is, we're in February here.
This is February 17, right?
Right. And again, and see, the mindset of Pochettino is interesting because I'm curious of how he, in his mind, who are locks, right? I think the roster is going to tell us a lot about that in March, about who is in his mind, locks, right? Because if assuming everyone's healthy, which they won't be, and then we can start picking and choosing. Say, okay, that player was left out because they're not healthy. Pepe, not out. He's got a broken arm. Okay, that was his replacement, right? It's gonna have a little bit more insight on terms of the depth, especially if we see what we normally see, where the roster gets released and then players, can't make it before camp, and then we'll kind of get a better idea of who is next in line within that pecking order. In general, I mean, I think when to me, I think I look at it this way to kind of piggyback on what Lawrence was saying. We look at center backs as an example, right? I think there are players like Scally and Freeman that can play like that right center back position that also can play the wing position if they needed to in a pinch. So I think you have a little bit of that. If you're not looking at a balanced roster and you have a couple spots where you can have players move, I think you provide a little bit more opportunity for other players to sneak in a position potentially. But if you're trying to figure out who your other center backs are and you're like, I don't really know, I'm like, I'm sorry, Nokaya Banks has to be looked at as a serious consideration. No offense to Miles Robinson or Trusty or CCV. I'm sorry, he's playing consistently week after week. I don't care that he's 19 years old. I care about what he's doing out there. So to me, that has to be considered as well in there. But again, my two picks are Aronson and Aguilar on that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm almost at the point where I'm like, if you don't have called Noah Banks up in March, I think you should be fired. That's super extreme, but what are you doing then? What's the point? You're clearly not doing your job because he's very, in my opinion, head and shoulders above anyone else playing right now outside of Chris Richards. He just is. So, my two are Christian Roldan.
Oh,
I know. And Alex Zendejas. And I do pick Zendejas because I think he's actually good enough to play. We need winger depth. I think he can provide that. I say Christian Roldan because why else did they have him go to the Super Bowl and have someone from U.S. Soccer follow him the whole damn time and make content and all this crap that if he's not a lock for the World Cup roster. And this man still continued. He had a singular performance that was above average for this damn national team in 50 appearances. He's had one good appearance. And now all of a sudden we got it. He's coming. Dude, I don't care. I mean, we had people saying that they might see him starting if Tyler Adams isn't available. What are we doing? Stop being prisoners of the moment and look at the dude who actually plays soccer. He's put up a body of work. He is, at best, a sub on a Gold Cup team. And y'all telling me he was on. But that is why I'm like, well, he's probably coming because Lord knows they love a dude who's just a locker room he's a locker room presence. He's a good locker room guy. I mean, what is this? Pee-wee football? I mean, I don't give a shit how good of a fucking. Sorry, I'm getting out of it. But
don't apologize. Let it go.
I don't give a shit how much of a. Oh, he's got leadership. He is not good enough to be on the field. Period.
You ever notice?
Give me a guy who is a decent enough leader, but also possibly could step on the field and not embarrass us. And Christian Roldan is not that dude. But yet, he's going to get picked again. And that's what makes me mad.
You ever notice when people talk about a player and he's a locker room this used to drive me crazy 15 years ago. The buzzword was intangibles. He's got the intangibles. So you're saying that he can't do anything on the field, right? That's what you're saying. Because if he could, you'd be telling me what he could do on the field and not telling me about his intangibles.
Those are my two. And I hate one of them. But Zendejas, I actually do think is on. I think he's a guy that should get there because if he continues to play well in league at Mekis, we need the winger depth. Right now, we don't really have any wingers that yes, Tim Weah. That's it. You know, you could put Haji on the left, but it's such a small pool of guys who I think could play out there. I almost said Diego Luna.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Does Zendejas make it over Luna? Because to me, they're they're in the same slot for me when I'm looking at the depth on this, right?
I would take Zendejas over Luna because Zendejas is more of an actual kind of winger. Like he does stay a little farther out, but he does come inside, so he is a little bit. He can play that.
I think he does both very well. I mean, Luna,
exactly.
Luna to me, I think he does a lot of more dynamic type stuff up there. That's a little outside the playbook. But I mean, again, if you're dealing with a whole healthy roster, I had Zendejas over Luna in mind at the moment. So, but I think the MLS season, once that kicks off and we get a few months into it, I think we'll have a better feel of where the form on some of these players are going to be.
I think Luna's a lock. Not necessarily because it's not that he doesn't deserve to. I love Diego Luna. I think Mauricio Pochettino loves Diego Luna even more than I do. I think Diego Luna is his favorite player with the U.S. national team because the problem was these players don't give a shit. And Mauricio Pochettino gets here and he's like, why don't these players give a shit? This is a problem. How do we get them? And then the January camp happens and Diego Luna's got a broken face and saying, hey, let me go back in the game. And he goes back in the game and assists. And I think Pochettino's like, I'm riding or dying with this guy for the rest of my tenure with this team. So
that's why if Diego Luna, I don't want him to not be there. I just understand that there are finite amount of spots. But if he's there because he brings that, plus I know he can actually play soccer well, great.
And I think I made this point when we did our post Gold Cup show. So this was 7 or 8 months ago. But I said Diego Luna needs to be at the World Cup, but he doesn't need to be a starter. I think he would excel tremendously in the super sub type role. Bring him on as game's starting to slow down. Bring him on in the 60th minute and light things off that way. But I think he's a lot because I think Pochettino absolutely loves him and has from the first time he had him in camp. I think is he the only player that has been in every single camp since? Well, no, he wasn't in every Pochettino camp because he didn't show up till January 25. So forget that.
Right, but he has been. I think he was in every camp last year, if I'm trying to remember correctly. I'll also say this: MLS season has not started, and whether guys in MLS like to hear this or not, you have to prove. I cannot assume that you're going to carry whatever form you had from 2025 into 2026. I cannot assume that. So that does still apply to Diego Luna. Diego Luna still has to show up for the first couple, games in this season. Other guys who fall into that, every single goalkeeper, because
Mhm.
you have to show up and prove. I mean, look, Matt Freese, sure, you're the number one now because I mean, I don't know what you've done to earn it, but fine. Buddy,
Center is
you gotta,
ass.
yeah, well, yeah. I like you, but like you got an MLS season, and I can't just assume that you're going to be the same dude who played well in 2025. I just can't.
Is NYCFC in the CONCACAF Champions League this year? Or
Mm,
excuse me, the CONCACAF Champions Cup.
mm,
Excuse me.
I don't think.
Okay. I was just
There you
thinking that
not qualify as
maybe.
prop 2 seasons ago.
Oof.
No, it doesn't look like it.
No.
Well, I was thinking that may be, extra pressure cooker type games to sharpen the knife that is Matt Freese. But if he's not in, then
Well,
that's
I
just
will
another.
say who is Roman Salentano from FC Cincinnati. So there's one.
I think
If
as
he
far as
starts,
goalkeeper,
hasn't looked that way yet.
I think as far as goalkeepers, Turner and Freese are locks to be on the roster, and I think it is probably still up in the air who starts. And I think it's going to be one of those two that starts, and then whoever the third goalkeeper is. Are we bringing 4 goal? They expanded the rosters. Does that include a 4th goalkeeper now?
I
Or are
think we
staying
still
at 3?
only did 3 goalkeeper. No, we only did 3. So I think that is staying the same.
Yeah, I don't know who that third one will be. I think Turner and Freese are going to be there, barring injury. But as far as which one of them starts, I
mean, I Matt Turner could come out next season, this upcoming season, and be on fire and just benefit from the fact that he is playing every week. And who knows what happens in that March camp? Because I'm with you. I think you're looking at Turner, you're looking at Freeze. I mentioned Roman Celentano because again he is playing in Champions Cup, so that's kind of why Patrick Schulte got so propped up, and rightfully so. But if you're playing in those big types of atmospheres, maybe that helps. But Celentano, Schulte, Brady, I mean, shit, Klinsman, all these, I don't know. Like, I think Thomas and I are both like, just bring in Diego Cook, please. I'd rather someone who has a future, not someone who barely has a present. But there are just a lot of MLS guys that you have to prove it because other guys are out there proving it right now in season.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've made my point on who I think should start. I'm sorry, like World Cup qualifying, he doesn't have any of those pedigree. And you could say, well, he needs he'll get it. I'm like, not you get it by qualifying, and we didn't, right? Yeah. And so, and to me, like that's something that Klinsman talked about the intensity of playing in World Cups, and this is one of the reasons I did love him as a coach, is because he knew the level increased drastically from playing even at the highest club level to when you got to a World Cup, right? Mm-hmm. And so there are players that know what that is. Look, Turner, I actually watched one of the 2022 World Cup games the other day. He made some mistakes there, right? But again, Turner has 2 shutouts at a World Cup for the U.S. Howard doesn't have that. Miola doesn't have that. Brito doesn't have that, right? So, and that's in one World Cup. And mind you, that's one statistic in general. But to me, I think when we talk about that sort of thing, I know coaches want to put a mark on their team and say, this is a player I brought in, Aguimong, right? Like that's why I think he's going to be on it, because coaches have egos. And they're like, well, this is a player that I found and brought in, and he did something, right? It's like Berhalter did it. I mean, all the coaches do that. So that's why I think he's trying to make the mark with the goalkeeper. But I mean, you want to do it? I don't think goalkeeper is the position to do it with, but we'll find out. I mean, we'll find out how that goes. I mean, the season starts this weekend for the MLS, so it's worth keeping an eye on all the keepers, because there's probably a handful of them, in the MLS that are definitely still being considered.
Well, that's who's in bubble trouble and who's not in bubble trouble. Next up, we have the She Believes Cup. U.S. women are playing on March 1st, 4th, and 7th, and then the USMNT will play friendlies on March 28th and 31st in my hometown. So I'll be at those. Lawrence, are you heading to Nashville for that USA Argentina game?
I am. I have. That's confirmed. I'll be there for that. That's next Sunday, I believe. So I'll be.
I'm
there
sure
for
they
that
will.
for sure.
I'm sure they will have a sellout crowd.
Perhaps.
Listeners, I give a really big eye roll when I said that.
Yeah, that's. Nashville's going to keep getting games because it's the largest soccer stadium in the country. I don't know that it has sold out for a single national. There's been two men's games, 2 women's games, a Mexico game, 3 Club World Cup games, and I think between all of those, none of them sold out.
Keep going to Nashville. I'm sure that'll sell more tickets.
As somebody who's hoping to obtain a World Cup credential. Between now and the World Cup, please keep putting games in Nashville so I can keep going to do them and raise the profile. But no, long term, like the Olympics. The Olympics are going to Nashville in 2028.
Yeah, that is fun. We didn't talk about that. Yeah, Olympics are not playing, shockingly, because everyone was complaining as if the Olympics are always played in one city. The soccer venues have been announced. We have Nashville. We have. Let's tackle the California ones first. San Diego, San Jose are going to be part of that, as well as
Rose Bowl.
The Rose Bowl will be the showcase stadium. And then outside of that, you've got I'm trying to remember off the top of my head.
St. Louis,
New York City,
Columbus, Nashville,
St. Louis,
New York City.
Yeah. St. Louis, Columbus, Nashville, New York City. Spreading it out, cool. That's the only news we have. I don't have any real hot takes about it. Sorry, people were just complaining, and I'm like, it's never in the host city.
I don't. Yeah, that's the thing. It's like very, very rarely are all the games ever soccer ever in one host city. Now, could you make the argument that maybe some of those games could be closer to LA and some place like Phoenix or Vegas or something like that? Sure,
Sacramento, maybe. Sure,
but. It is a little bit surprising that there are 2 soccer-specific stadiums in LA, and they're not using either of them.
I mean, they are being used, just not for
it. But the
RFK Stadium was used for the Atlanta Olympics. So
RFK and the old Legion Field in Birmingham in '96.
And the old Legion,
1984. Navy Marine Corps Memorial Stadium in Annapolis, Maryland, was used as a stadium for the LA Olympics. Even a city, if there was one city in the world that you could bet your wallet, bet your life on, that had enough soccer stadiums to host Olympic soccer within the host city, it would have been London. And even London had games, and they had games in Cardiff, they had games in Glasgow, they had games in Manchester, they had them all over.
It's just the nature of having a really big stadium that can't be used every day. That's just what it comes down to. All right. Well, Lawrence, thank you for joining us. I'll be a little late, but thank you for getting here when it mattered. Thomas, thank you for joining me for the whole episode, as you always do. You can follow Thomas on Twitter at USKeeper. You can follow Lawrence at LDoc93 and follow their work on Chasing a Cup and Beyond the 90, if I have that respectively correct. Thanks, gentlemen, for joining me. Thanks, everyone, for listening. I'm Bart. I'm out.